So I want to premise this video by saying that it is simply the hardest challenge I have met in Dislyte. Easily. More difficult than Sentinel, or any of the dungeons or rituals that we have fought so far. There is actually so much to this build without using a legendary that I actually decided to record my voice for this. So the big changes that occurred with Apep this time is that it recovers a lot of health, and it also dispels all of your buffs. So after Apep has taken a few hits, he'll counterattack against your whole team and literally strip everything and detonate all the poisons. He will also still apply poisons to you whenever you attack him. So there are a few ways to handle these mechanics that have changed. I think the first one that we need to really deal with is his HP recovery. And the only way to really stop that is by playing Diseased. Now, there are only a few Espers that can actually apply Disease, and even fewer that are of the Inferno class of which he is weak to. That really only gives us one option, which is Atum, or the Minotaur guy. Given that Apep will counterattack after a certain number of hits, we only really want to use Espers that hit once. This means that Espers like Gabrielle are not really usable. So let's look at what Infernal Espers are available, and which ones have great single target damage while also not multi-hitting. For me, the standouts are Sander, Stuart, and Freddy. Now, there are really two parts to this fight. The first one is getting to the boss, and the second one is the boss itself. And the reason why I separate this into two parts is because you want to have all of your skills ready for the boss fight. So this means we want to focus on a turn order that we can speed tune properly. Now, the way I like to set up the order is by looking at the boss fight itself, kind of like working from the end and then backwards. In this case, I really wanted Atum to go first, not only to apply disease, but his skill 3 actually applies a defense break, which really makes beating Apep much easier. So that means from the order of damage dealers, it could literally be Atum, and then any other order of damage, it didn't really matter. Now, this kind of only gives you one slot for support, and so there's actually a really handy trick that you can do to make this fight significantly easier. So the trick is that the Esper named Alice, or the Witch, she can extend any buff that your team has by an additional turn. This means that any buff you receive from a relic, like in this case, immunity, can be extended by an additional turn. That means that all of our damage dealers, if they have an immunity set on, will no longer take poison damage from just attacking Apep. This also means that when Apep goes to counterattack, he won't actually be able to detonate poisons on you at all. Now this makes our turn order simply Alice first, then Atum, Sander, Stuart, and lastly Freddy. Now, the cool thing about Freddy is that he actually doesn't need to run the immunity set on him, because you actually want him to take more damage, so that way his skills can do more damage to the boss. So let's kind of look at each Esper and see how they're built. First up, we have Stuart, who is the main damage of the team. We want to make sure that he is crit capped, because he will be with Alice buffing him, and just stack as much damage as possible while also keeping him on immunity. Next up is Sander, who has amazing single target damage. Now, it would be nice to have more accuracy on him, but it's also really hard to relic that while also having the immunity set on. Next up is Atum, who just offers so much utility in disease and defense break. Like I said before, we want to make sure he goes first to apply that defense break to the boss, and he's actually very tanky, so he can actually kind of get you the last bit of damage you might need. After that, we have Alice, who is actually on an adamantine set. Her buff will work with that set and extend it for an additional turn, as well as guaranteeing that every stage you have attack up due to her passive. And then lastly, we have Freddy, Now he's just a great single target damage dealer, but also easily replaceable with Espers like Ares and things like that. As I had mentioned, I actually don't put him on a immunity set because I want him to take damage to maximize his damage output. Now let's take a look at the team in action and see how it sort of works in between waves as well as the boss fight itself. As you can see, the team can clear the first stage very well. The second stage has a lot of variation in it, which is why you sort of want to have 85% crit on everyone to consistently do the damage, so that way you're ready and have all your skills available for the boss fight itself. Now that we're at the boss stage, we can really see how the team is set up. Now you can see all the buffs Alice applies as well as extending them, and this is really so crucial to the build. Now Atum needs to apply the defense break and the disease here, or the whole run will actually fail. Now this is my favorite part of the whole run, seeing how much damage is really dealt. And this is the scariest part of the run, because Apep's counterattack and Dispel can completely wipe a team if they're not prepared, or if you don't have a strong enough adamantine shield. As you can see, most of the damage is already dealt, but if you get really unlucky with stuns, you can actually fail right now. And this is why this build works, but isn't consistent. It's also quite fast, but that's mostly out of necessity. If you are interested, I'll actually be including some of the relic quality that's required for this build at the end of the video, so you can kind of see how insane it is. But thank you for watching. Now the power level on Espers is really a nice gauge to understand how much is required of all the different Espers used for this build. And looking at relics like this kind of show you what you're sort of expecting or needing to actually do this. Now I don't want to go too far into it by showing you every relic, but it is very, very demanding. And I'm not really sure if newer players or people who haven't been able to farm a pet before now will even be able to attempt this. Not only are all the relics maxed out at the highest level, but almost every single one is also boosted. And I'm not talking boosted in one category, but every single category that is available. It is truly and completely demanding.